Today we're going to be talking about rests. So what you need that you should already have downloaded is the fillable rests notes sheet, which can be found if you go to the MyMCPS course page and then you go to files and then you click notes, it'll be inside that folder. It's called fillable rests notes. So I'll go ahead and share that with you so you can see what we're doing here. So here's fillable rests notes. So this looks very similar to the rhythms notes sheet that we've already done. The only difference is instead of having, so I'm talking about notes now as in music notes, not notes as in like taking notes, but the only difference is instead of musical notes being on this page, we have musical rests. So both music notes and rests take up space in time. They're both rhythms and we have to count them in a specific way. However, music notes have sound and rests are silence, but you still have to count them in a piece of music. So these are going to correspond to your rhythms notes as well though, because these are very similar. Every note has a counterpart that's a rest, like it has a sibling that's a rest. So this is why this looks very similar. So again, we're staying in 4/4 time, and you still don't need to know what that means just yet. But in 4/4 time, this first rest here is called a whole rest. And just like the whole note in 4/4 time, it's going to receive 4 beats. So important thing to notice just right off the bat about this whole rest is how it looks so that we can tell it apart from the others. So this one looks like kind of like a hole in the ground. So if this line is the hole in the ground, then the rectangle underneath is the hole. So that's why it's a whole rest, kind of easy to remember. Then we're going to go down. So just like on the rhythms note sheet, the next line down here on this little like tree is what happens if you split the previous note in half, or the previous rest in half. So if I take this whole rest and I divide it by 2, I'm going to get 2 half rests. So the half rest, which looks like this, is going to receive, if we divide 4 by 2, it's going to be 2 beats. And again, we're just kind of trying to pay attention to how these look. So this half rest looks kind of like a top hat, and the word hat is kind of similar to the word half. So that's kind of usually how we remember it. The whole rest and the half rest are kind of opposites of one another, so it's good to have that way to remember which one is which. So the whole rest looks like a hole in the ground, and the half rest looks like a top hat. And remember, the whole rest is going to be the brother or the sibling of the whole note. So it's note makes sound, rest makes silence. Then the half rest is going to be the sibling of the half note. Just the half note makes sound and the half rest makes silence. So we're going to go down to the next line. If we split this half rest in half, we're going to divide it in 2. What we're going to get is 2 quarter rests. This is a quarter rest. And if we divide 2 in half, we're going to get 1. So that means each one of these quarter rests is going to get 1 beat of silence. And that's exactly like the quarter note. It's just the quarter note is going to make sound and the quarter rest is going to make silence. And again, just trying to memorize what they look like. This quarter rest doesn't really have like a cheat sheet. It just kind of looks like a squiggly line. You're just going to have to know that one. Quarter rest looks like a little squiggly. So we'll go the next line down. If I split this quarter rest in half, what I'm going to get is 2 eighth rests. And if we take 1 and we divide it in half, we're going to get a half. So that means each one of these eighth rests is going to get half a beat. Now, if you remember on our rhythms note sheet, the eighth note has a solid note head and a little stem, and then it also has a flag. So it's interesting because the eighth rest, it kind of looks like a 7 with like a dot on the end, but also really it's a line with a different kind of flag. It's a line with like a weird flag with a dot. So that's your eighth rest, and it doesn't look like the quarter rest or the half rest or the whole rest. It kind of looks like its own thing. Last one, we're going to divide your eighth rest in half. So if we divide an eighth rest in half, we're going to get a 16th rest. And if we take a half and we divide it in half, which is basically 1/2 times 1/2, then you're going to get a fourth. So this is your 16th rest, and it looks really similar to your eighth rest, except for your eighth rest has 1 flag and your 16th rest has 2, which is exactly the same thing as the eighth note has 1 flag or 1 beam, and then the 16th note has 2 flags or 2 beams. So again, these are all siblings of those other notes that we already talked about. So I'm actually going to go ahead and open up the rhythms notes page so that you can kind of see the similarities here. And so we can talk about how you would count these. So just like I said, each one of these rests has a rhythm, has a note that's a counterpart. So this whole rest is the sibling of the whole note. They both get 4 beats. This half rest is the sibling of the half note. They both get 2 beats. This quarter rest is the sibling of the quarter note. They both get 1 beat. These eighth rests are the sibling of these eighth notes. They each get half a beat. And then these 16th rests are the sibling of these 16th notes. They each get a quarter of a beat. So for the rests, we're going to count them and we're going to patch the same way we would for the notes. You're just not going to make any sound. You're just going to do the counting in your head. So for example, for the whole note, we said that we say ta and we hold it for 4 beats. So we're going ta, because that's 4 beats. That's 4 down beats when you're hitting the table or you're hitting your leg while you're patching. So that's your whole note. You're going to do the exact same thing for the whole rest. You're still going to count to 4. You just don't speak anything. So if you see a whole rest on the page, if you are speaking or if you are playing, if you are singing, you don't make any sound for 4 beats. You just go like this and then you count to 4 in your head. That's it. So same kind of thing. I'm going to move on to the half rest. We said the half rest looks like a top hat and it gets 2 beats. So your half note, we said we're going to hold that note for 2 beats. So if we were speaking a half note, we would go like this. Ta. So if we're speaking a half rest, you're still going to count to 2. You're just not going to speak or sing or play any sound. So your half rest is going to sound like this. Just that in your head, you have to be counting to 2. You have to be counting to 2 downbeats while you're patching. Hopefully you're getting the hang of this. The next one is the quarter rest. So again, your quarter note is going to be 1 beat. So when you speak a quarter note, you're going to go like this. Ta, for 1 beat, right? Your quarter rest, if you're patching and if you're performing a quarter rest, if you're singing or speaking or playing it, you don't make any sounds, but you still count to 1. So you go like this. There's your quarter rest. Your eighth rest, again, this is kind of confusing because if they're by themselves, if they're not in a pair of 2, they're pretty difficult to count. So if they're by themselves, we'll talk about that some other time, but if you've got 2 eighth rests together, that's how we usually like to count eighth notes, because we like to see eighth notes in pairs of 2. They're not always in a pair of 2, but if they are, then you're going to count them like this. Ta, di. Okay. So that's your 2 eighth notes, one right after the other, right? We're now dividing our quarter note, ta, into 2 separate things, ta, di, okay? So those are your 2 eighth notes. If you're counting 2 eighth rests, you're going to do the exact same thing. You're just not going to make any sound. You're going to go like this. That's your eighth rest. Then same kind of thing, 16th notes are easiest to count if they're in a group of 4. They're not always in a group of 4, but we like them to be. So if you've got 4 16th notes together, remember it sounds like this. We're now subdividing. We're going takadimi. That's 4 16th notes. So if we were going to count 4 16th rests, then we count it like this. While in your head, you're going takadimi. You're just not saying that out loud. Because if you saw 4 16th rests, you wouldn't sing or play anything if you were performing it. You would just count it in your head. That's the basic idea of rhythms and rests. So hopefully that made a little bit of sense. We'll do some more practice with that. Just make sure you've got those notes down and turn them on in.